The first and what may be the only presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is now in the books. Trump and some of his allies insist that he won the face-off, but CNN polls show Vice President Harris soundly defeated the former president.
Now let's discuss with former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. He's part of Republicans for Harris. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us. What are you hearing from Republicans and independents that you've spoken to that went into last night open to hearing the VP's pitch?
Well, in its simplest form, Kamala Harris had a really good night. Donald Trump had a really bad night, and her upward trajectory is going to continue. It's going to be interesting to watch how much worse Donald Trump makes this situation or the fallout from the debate, how he reacts to getting punched in the face in the public square. I think we're watching him kind of grasp at straws, but certainly this only helped one candidate, and that's Kamala Harris. And for me, as a Republican who's trying to play a bank shot here of electing a Democrat so we can actually get our party back by defeating Donald Trump permanently, this was a good night last night. But work to be done and minds to be convinced still. I do think there's this growing sense of encouragement, a sense of responsibility amongst Republicans to do the right thing in this race. So I do think we're starting to see a groundswell.
What did you think about looking at, say, these flash polling numbers where Trump actually grew his advantage over Harris on the economy with voters? This is still a considerable disadvantage for her, and she did dodge a question about implementing or why she did not implement some of these economic policies that she's proposing, considering she has been a part of this current administration for almost 4 years.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's some staggering, there's a staggering delta between his polling numbers on the economy and hers. And certainly that's a difficult spot for her. But I do think that the economy is so complex right now, right? I mean, if you're an individual who's trying to find a way to retire in the next few years, you're really happy with this economy. Your 401k is strong, your investments are strong, your house is worth more than it's ever been. If you're somebody trying to buy a house for the first time, it's difficult. So I do think it is a blurred message across with the economy. But if you think about some of the easier subject matters that he could have probably landed some big punches on, like Afghanistan and flip-flopping on some of the issues and inflation as a whole, I just felt like every time they got to that precipice, she baited him in or launched into a little bit of an angle, and he just took the bait. And he never really amplified really what he should have taken her to task for. That was his fault, not hers.
Jeff, what did you make of his line about people eating dogs?
Yeah, I'm confused, right? I got 3 teenage kids, so I mean, they kind of keep me up to date. I had no idea what was going on until I started Googling. But look, we're trying to elect the commander-in-chief to help us figure out a way to navigate through difficult situations globally, domestically, the border. Certainly, if he wants to play that game, and look, that's really kind of been the shtick he's played. Just try to be, off target and impromptu, and unfortunately, he didn't get to some of the big issues. I do think one of the most damning things that he did the entire night is not commit to defending Ukraine.
Before the debate happens, but clearly he knew what he was talking about. Sarah Cory Booker is a Democrat of New Jersey. He's a longtime friend and ally of Vice President Kamala Harris. They also both sat on the Senate Judiciary Committee together. You see them there, and he joins me now. Yeah, Senator, there's a weird thing that happens in the run-up to debates with this expectations games, where people start to be like, oh, my opponent's the best debater, and I am just a humble slob, and it's a little put on. But at the same time, both you and Gavin Newsom last night were like, she's so good. She's going to kill him. She's going to be so good. And I was thinking, boy, it's already a lot of pressure on her. But you were right. What'd you think?
I mean, it was simply awesome. I sat next to her for years in high-stakes judiciary hearings and watched how she rose to every single moment. Supreme Court Justice, Cabinet Secretary. You pitch to Kamala, she's going to knock it out of the park when it really counts. And we know the stakes were high for her going into it, but she is a gamer, and she really brought it last night. And she brought it, as I said 2 nights ago, in a deft way. She found ways to bait him in and expose him raw before everybody who just looked, no matter who you are, Democrat or Republican, when you're talking about eating cats and dogs, just let your opponent show his truth.
the thing you said about her sort of, this is a high stakes situation, she knocked out of the park. What's been striking to me is I've interviewed the vice president a number of times in the same way that I've interviewed you. I don't know her very well, but she's always been incredibly formidable and impressive. But as a sort of character testament, I mean, the amount of pressure that she's been on her, just as a person and as a politician, and at each point that pressure she has had to respond to, navigate it, I just think speaks remarkably well to her ability to be a president, honestly, given that the job is a very pressure-packed job with really high stakes, and you really got to deliver in the moments that matter most.
Yeah, she really is a clutch player, and I think it does speak to her presidential capacities. Look, you talk to Kamala, and this is what I've loved about her throughout this campaign, is she's not making this about her. Donald Trump, it was all about him, his fragile ego. He couldn't resist trying to defend any attacks on that ego. For Kamala, it's about everybody else. And this is what I think I want people to really know about her right now, is she feels the urgency of the challenges before the American people. She feels very much the pain of people who are facing the stripping away of their reproductive rights. She feels an economy which many people don't think works for them anymore in America. These are issues that drive her. She is about serving this country and knows that this is a moment not to beat Donald Trump, but really where we need leaders in the plural to rise and meet it so that we as a nation can come together and move forward. And I'm really...
First of all, I'm just wondering overall what you thought of the debate last night, because it does seem from maybe like 10 minutes into it, Vice President Harris certainly found a way to get underneath or under the skin of the former president in a way that very few people have in a public debate.
Well, let's just talk about her rather than him right now. We can come back to his skin later. But right now, I want to talk about her leadership. I was so proud of her. She was presidential. She showed her new way forward, new and forward, her plan to take us forward, command of the issues, eloquence in talking about them, again, strategic in her thinking. I thought she was just spectacular, but her excellence did get under his skin. And it was so strange because one of the things I was so proud about Kamala, the vice president last night, was that she prioritized in her answers. Any one of them could be a program discussion, but she prioritized the importance, whether it was a woman's right to choose, whether it's our national security, whether it's issues that relate to our economy and the rest. She prioritized. And that means there's so much more to come as we go from here. So I think she did great. As to baiting him and him taking the bait, I don't even like to use his name, much less talk about him. But the fact is, I thought he looked foolish last night. I thought she looked presidential. I thought he looked silly.
Have you, watching him on that stage, you've obviously, you know him very well from interacting with him in a professional capacity. Has he, what do you make of where he is at? Is his skill level the same? Is he different than he was, as you recall, in office in terms of his stamina, thinking, whatever it may be?
You know, one of those big balloons when you stick a pin in and it swirls around the room until it comes down to nothing? That's what he reminds me of, just less and less and less and less. Like somebody stuck a pin in him and he's just greatly diminished. The fact that we're talking about kitchen table issues, people's personal health, their financial health, all the things that people care about. And what is he talking about? And the things you talked about earlier, which I won't spend any more time going into. But I do think that people saw a big distinction as to who can be the commander-in-chief, who is respected. And she has served as vice president, as a senator before that. This is a person who is a good person. Personally, I know her as a good person. a person of deep faith who cares about people, and her public service is a reflection of that. Officially, I know her as a person of strength. She knows the priorities, the issues. She has a command of them, as I mentioned. She is strategic in how to get the job done and eloquent in how to convey it. And politically, she is very astute. So when she puts forth the new way forward, she's taking us from the greatness of Joe Biden and all that we, working together, accomplished in that term to new heights in her way. So I thought that was demonstrated very clearly. And with over, 67 million people watching, it's a good start. We say to everyone, now our work continues. We must get out the vote. Well, we can talk about that.
Let me ask you about that. I mean, as you write you know a thing or two about campaigning. Your book has a just fascinating look at politics in America in your career. What needs to happen now, in your opinion, for the Harris campaign? Because, I mean, look, no matter how well people think she may have done last night, you look at the numbers, this is still, tell me if you believe it, a very, very close race, particularly in these battleground states.
Well, first, let me just say that what I loved about last night, she was herself. She was herself and being articulate and knowledgeable and prioritizing and the rest. She doesn't need any advice from the rest of us on how she should proceed. But what we need to do is to make sure she wins. So for all of those millions of people who saw her and were excited by it, the rest, that's okay, but we have to put it into action. So that means I have 3 M's, mobilize. We must own the ground to get out the vote. Every single vote that is for Kamala Harris to come to the polls. We have to message in a way that is inspiring. You don't run on empty as you mobilize. You need inspiration. We want a message that is bold and progressive, but not menacing, but is unifying for our country. As she